So I'm Clare Murphy-Shaw. I am an attorney with the McCrummen Immigration Law Group, and we are located in Kansas City, Missouri. So I am licensed to practice law in the states of Kansas and Missouri. I just recommended our law firm as a good potential partner to subcontract with the federal government to serve kids who are detained in the custody of the Office of Refugee Resettlement.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up applying for a grant. It's administered through the Vera Institute of Justice in New York City, and they locate, train, and provide technical assistance and fund legal service providers for all children in the custody of the Office of Refugee Resettlement.
Okay.
So they manage this program nationwide, and I'm just one of many, many legal service providers that serve kids who are temporarily in the custody of the Office of Refugee Resettlement. The children are really politicized, and it just breaks my heart when this whole system gets politicized, and it's a political football back and forth. Because what happens is that the kids are caught in the middle of that, and so they end up paying the price for policy changes that have unintended consequences, so I feel like it should be something that no matter where you are on the political spectrum, we can all agree that kids need our protection. It shouldn't be controversial. It doesn't really matter how they got here or why. The fact is they're here, and so to me it's our obligation and duty just as human beings to care for them and make sure that they end up being placed into a safe environment where their needs are met. And so I think most people can agree with that. Detaining people in jail isn't a proper response to people fleeing or coming here, whether it's because of economic reasons or because it's of being driven out due to climate changes. I mean, we're going to be seeing, I think, large influxes of people for all kinds of different reasons, continuing and growing in the future. And so we have to figure out, look at what hasn't worked, which I think is detention, and move to systems that do work, and opening legal channels to get people legalized here in the United States, because we don't want to have a subclass of people who have no access to citizenship, who have no access to getting an ID, who have no access to working legally, and who can be therefore mistreated and treated as kind of an underclass of people, which what I gather, they have a much higher number of refugee resettlement.
Yeah.
And so when the difference between like refugees and asylees is that they come in with legal status, they're designated to be refugees, and they come in legally. When what we have is we have a very small number of refugees, especially after Trump took the number down from what Obama had down to like almost zero. And so we need to rebuild up the number of refugees we actually can accept again, because all of the refugee resettlement agencies were pretty much decimated because they lost all their funding. But also understand that what we have happening is because people have no refugee status or access to refugee status, so they're coming as asylum seekers, meaning they don't have any legal status or permission to enter. So they're having to fight for that once they're here. And so if we could set up, agencies and organizations in Central America where these mass numbers of asylees are fleeing, to actually qualify them as refugees and establish a refugee status so that they could come here as refugees, I think that could really change the dynamics of what's happening at the US border, people's migration pattern, and also their eligibility for benefits once they're here, and integration into society and all those things, because they don't have to fight so hard just to even get that green card.
Yeah.